Hi there, just read this disclaimer please.
You may have noticed in my other video a position in Pfizer. I'm not sure if I've actually mentioned it though, but as you can see on the 3rd of May I purchased £2 worth of Pfizer. This was all just part of the Hypnosis song money from when I sold that too early. So that Pfizer holding is actually in the invest account. At the time there wasn't enough room, there wasn't enough cash in the ISA to use it. But I mean that cash that's in the ISA is kind of earmarked for Fundsmith anyway, really, except for the fact that on the 30th of May I put 1,950 into Next Energy Solar Fund. So I've left myself a bit less cash actually to put Fundsmith in here. I might end up doing the Fundsmith switch in two goes. So as you can see, the Pfizer one was like a 5% yield when I bought it, slightly over 5.07%. It just seemed like good value, a bit similar to GSK when I first bought that. So who knows if the dividend will keep going? Hard to tell really. I'm thinking to myself at some point I might do a little bit of a rebalance between GSK and Pfizer. Next Energy Fund have accounted for a 50% cut in the dividend. So because it's one of these ridiculously high ones that I don't expect to continue. See there, without it being halved, it's 11.33%. Had a bit of a pleasant surprise with this one actually. It turns out, because it's domiciled in Guernsey, there's no stamp duty to pay. So the estimate I had in here, where I take off 1%, was very pessimistic. My starting yield, if I take out the 50%, my starting yield was 11.65%. Yeah, so that's what I've done with the cash, and now the cash is down to about 56 quid. And that brings me to my next thing I wanted to cover. If we notice here in the unitisation spreadsheet that it was literally yesterday where I decided to add £6 to the portfolio last year. So I think I'll probably do the same now. I feel like I've got a bit too much cash. Yesterday I went into all the accounts and updated these numbers, and I'm thinking about putting £3 into the portfolio, because I've got 22,800 at the moment outside the portfolio, which feels a bit high to me, to be honest. I've been kind of looking at some scenarios. The scenario I'm thinking about is if I have to stop travelling, living this frugal way, and I have to go back to the UK, rent somewhere, and that's where this budget here would have to come into play. I can't imagine myself living in the UK and spending less than that. So I need to make sure this budget works. I mean, to be honest, that budget might not be high enough. It's been a while since I've lived a conventional life in the UK, just renting a flat or something. Because I've been in a caravan for 5 years, and I've now been travelling in frugal or lower cost countries. I've been travelling in for a year and 5 months, something like that. So it's been a long time since I've lived conventionally. So to be honest, these amounts, it might result in me kind of possibly not having a car at all, initially at least. I wanted to look at a scenario where the car I'd really like, I've worked out if I spent 15 grand on the car I'd really quite like, well, that's stretching it a bit. It's, an average car. I'd have to spend it there, but obviously this budget also has in it the saving up for a car. So I would need to spend part of that budget, let's say £1,000 a year. So it's like front loading the spending. So something like this Corolla would be kind of like my first choice car, nice sensible car. It's the automatic gearbox I'm hoping would be more suitable to me, because I'd rather not drive a manual as a preference, but the one I had in my Audi A3 when I was driving my caravan around had an awful gearbox. It hesitated at every junction. It was so annoying, and I think this is a better one, and it's very efficient on fuel and hopefully reliable long term, hopefully. As you can see, the numbers here in my pure growth portfolio, because this higher budget requires selling down of the growth portfolio as well as taking the income from the whole portfolio. And so this doomsday spreadsheet here of having really bad results, really bad returns here, and selling down the portfolio still doesn't go to zero. But then obviously the trouble comes. This is budgeting for a 3-year-old car. I think 2021. But then obviously in year 7 that 3-year-old car will be 10 years old. So it would be prudent to be replacing something when it's 10 years old, really. A decent estimate of the differential would be about 10 grand in 7 years' time. So to go from a 10-year-old car to a 3-year-old car again, the difference is probably about 10 grand. So if we go from minus 1,000 to plus 9,000 in this year, so this column just adjusts my spending, you see. This is where the wall gets hit, you see. Well, hang on, we need to also do this. So actually this number needs to be higher, doesn't it? 1,200. So it's the replacement car after 10 years that starts making this not work financially. So I figured, this is the doomsday scenario. So, because if I had to do this today, buy a 15 grand car and have 5 grand left over to throw at a rental place, because I'll probably have to pay 6 months up front because I've no job. It's difficult. To be honest, I think it might be a struggle to even find a place. So I might end up just having to go in Airbnbs and possibly renting rooms and stuff. But yeah, this is doomsday. I don't want to do this. I'm happier travelling around, doing things cheaper. But if I had to move back, this is what I'd have to contend with. Because if I had to do this today, here, this doomsday scenario has it as 80 grand, my pure growth portfolio. But if we look at the pure growth portfolio, at the moment, it's had a bit of a recovery. It's at 93 grand. So I could take 13 grand out of it and we'd be left where we are in this spreadsheet, 80 grand. So I'd only actually, if I was coming at it in a decent time like now, I'd only have to spend 2 grand up front, 9 grand for the replacement 7 years later, and we're looking good on the rundown of the growth portfolio, even in this doomsday scenario. So this is kind of like if the doomsday scenario happened tomorrow rather than already happening. Because at the moment things are reasonably good. We're kind of at all-time highs. So yeah, that works. But obviously we need a doomsday scenario if I had to, if in a year's time the markets did badly, and also I had a medical issue where I had to move home and rent somewhere, I could go for a cheaper car. I could spend 8,500 on a car. The depreciation would be less, so we'd go let's go 900 maybe each year. So I'd actually have more to spend because I'd be spending less on the car. And then a replacement after 7 years, a like-for-like replacement might be about, let's go 6,500. We're pretty good there at 8,500. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take money and put it in the portfolio because these numbers are based on the cash outside. It's using that cell there. So if we now take money and add it to the portfolio, which takes it away from cash outside the portfolio, I'm wondering if 3 grand might still work, because keeping my cash below 20 grand feels better than allowing it to grow too much. And as you can see there, the numbers still work for taking 3 grand out, because obviously you don't want too much cash, because even though it's doing well now, this is my estimate of how it's doing now, 850 quid a year, 4.3%. A lot of that's because I'm accounting for cash lingering in brokerage accounts before it gets reinvested. But actually to be honest, a lot of that now is in money market funds anyway, so that's earning just as good, if not better, than the rest of the cash. So this is kind of pessimistic, to be honest. You'll notice here that I've opened a savings account with Chase. Want that, and that I'm using that because that's got a bonus until January, so it's not going to last forever unless they do another bonus. So that's getting 5.1% there, because that was in Zopa at 4.54%, I think. So that's like my instant cash. because and then the rest of the cash I'll be putting in the Trading 212 Invest account. But that takes about 3 days to get sent to your account. That's why you need a buffer account for my spending that's instant. So I'll keep topping up that to 1,000. I mean, at the moment, there's quite a bit of cash in my Trading 212 ISA. Sorry, I've got these numbers the wrong way round. It doesn't matter though. Yeah, these numbers are the wrong way round. I've got £3,000 in the Invest account and about 6.5 in the ISA. What I'll do is I'll just keep the bulk of it. I'll keep £1,000 in Chase, probably about £2,000 in the Invest account, ready just to send to myself instantly. And then the bulk of it, I'll probably buy the money market fund. I think it's CSH. Oh no, sorry, it'll be ERNS because that's a distributing one. Easier to work out the tax on the distributing ones when they're outside of tax wrappers. At the moment, it's just all in cash, getting 5.2%. But you can do slightly better with a money market fund, which I probably will do with kind of the bulk of it that's probably not going to get used unless I do something like move home and buy a car. But obviously at the moment, £6,000 worth of it is still in that badly timed fix, the 2-year fix that ends in February. So that will be going up. You'll notice here that I'm accounting for 3.2%. So this doomsday scenario is accounting for a bit of a reduction in the Bank of England rate. But who knows how low that might go in the future. But that's why I don't want too much in cash, because you don't know where the interest rates are going. The car that I'm thinking about in this scenario is something like this, Citroen C1. Just really simple, really low cost, easy to service and cheap to service. I've owned a Citroen C1 before and I really liked it. I liked the low expectations it set for itself, because if there's no expectations of a car, you're not going to care if something rattles, you know. And it was a really good car actually. Nothing ever went wrong with it. I owned it for about 5 years before I bought the Audi A3, and I preferred the Citroen C1 to be honest. Similar with my phones. When I buy phones, I always get a cheap one because then I don't care if it glitches because it was cheap to start with. If I spent 800 quid on a phone, I'd be pissed every time something, even the slightest thing went wrong. So actually, maybe this is the good car for me to buy anyway. Even if I was going from a position of strength, maybe this is the better car to buy. Yeah, so I'm thinking £3,000 adding to the portfolio. I've gone back and forth on this in the past 24 hours. I've played around with this spreadsheet quite a lot, trying to work out how much to add to the portfolio. But that's good, because in terms of a cash flow as well, that leaves me plenty, because if I spent 8.5 on the car, that leaves me with about 11 grand. I'd probably have to throw 5-6 grand at a landlord to let me rent somewhere, even though I've not got a job. And I'd still have a nice little buffer then. I'd have like 5-6 grand buffer as well in cash. So yeah, anyway, let's actually add it to the portfolio in the unitisation spreadsheet. It's Sunday today, so I can't invest it anyway. So the first thing I'll do is this. I'll add it to there because this is what I always forget to do. So I'm going to do it first. This is the cash balance. So each month I strip out the interest from the cash column. Here's the cash column here, G. So to strip that out, I keep track of how much cash there should be once the interest is stripped out. So now it's going to be 3,056 and 79p. So to add £3,000, we plus 3,000 to the cash column. But if you keep an eye on K226 here, where the mouse is, you'll notice that the accumulation price of the fund goes up, see, to 1.27. That's not fair though, is it? Because the fund hasn't suddenly done better. It's just had £3,000 added to it. So that's what this column does here. We need to add the £3,000 to this column. And it gets the accumulation price and the income price. You'll notice this changed as well. If we add £3,000 there, it goes back to exactly what it was before, but we've got £3,000 added. And it's done it by, in inverted commas, it's purchased about 2,300, is it? Something like that. It's purchased those units to make it all add up still, but without measuring an unfair rise in the portfolio performance. And it's done the same thing with the income units and the price there as well. When I took £3,000 out of the portfolio here, you'll notice I didn't increase the dividend income. And that is because thinking about buying something that's bombed out and isn't currently paying a dividend. And that's why I've also accounted for it here. I've put 0% on my cash, which now needs to go back up to 3,000, doesn't it? I didn't want that to go up to 3,000 and then suddenly registering an interest of whatever, however much, because I want to be able to invest that and not reduce this number here. It's just mental gymnastics, to be honest. So just for the record, this is the video from this time last year, or a few weeks later, and my cash outside the portfolio was 17,902, and that was after I'd put the £6,000 into the portfolio. So I've kind of made progress on the cash as well. So it's kind of nice to see that I've added to the portfolio, but I've also boosted my cash reserves from 18 grand to about 20 grand. Alright, I don't think there's anything else to say. I'll see you next time. Bye bye.